The morning sun had barely risen over the Serengeti when Ranger Noah Carter heard a cry unlike any other, a low, panicked sound that echoed through the still air, cutting through the songs of distant birds. He was making his usual patrol when it reached him, sharp and desperate. It wasn't the sound of a predator on the hunt. It was fear, real raw fear. He followed the noise through a narrow trail, his boots crunching over dry earth until he reached the clearing, and froze. There, at the edge of what looked like an ordinary water pit, a hyena was trapped in quicksand, her body half submerged, her front paws thrashing against the mud that pulled her deeper with every movement. Her spotted fur was coated in slime, and her amber eyes were wide with terror. For a moment Noah could only stare. Most rangers would have turned away. Hyenas had a reputation. Scavengers, dangerous, unpredictable. But Noah didn't see a monster. He saw an animal fighting for its life, terrified and alone. "Easy, girl," he whispered, stepping closer. She let out a guttural growl, warning him to stay back, but he didn't stop. The mud sucked at her with every breath. He knew that if he didn't act now, she'd be gone within minutes. He dropped his gear, grabbed a rope from the jeep, and tied one end around a thick acacia root. "Hang on, you're not dying here today," he said under his breath. The hyena's eyes locked on him as if she understood. She was trembling, exhausted, the quicksand inching toward her neck. Noah threw the rope forward, but it landed just short of her reach. She whined, a sound so full of helplessness it tore through him. He edged closer, his boots sinking into the edge of the pit, every step a gamble. The ground felt soft beneath him. One wrong move and he'd be in there too. "Come on," he muttered, tossing the rope again. This time it landed across her shoulders. The hyena flinched but didn't fight. Slowly, she tried to pull herself up as he braced his legs and pulled with all his strength. His arms burned, his heart pounded. Mud splashed across his chest, and for a terrifying second, he felt the suction take hold of his boots. "No, no, no!" He shouted, straining harder, and then movement. The rope tightened, the mud gave way, and inch by inch the hyena began to rise. When she finally broke free, collapsing onto solid ground, Noah dropped to his knees beside her, gasping. She lay there, chest heaving, covered in mud and shaking. For a long moment, man and animal just stared at each other, both too exhausted to move. Then, to Noah's astonishment, the hyena didn't run. She simply stood, wobbling slightly, and gave a strange, short sound, almost like laughter. Not mockery, gratitude. Noah smiled faintly. "You're welcome," he whispered. He didn't know it yet. But that single act of courage would spark a connection that would change everything he believed about fear. Loyalty and the wild itself. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications, because the story you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about hyenas and about the meaning of compassion. The morning after the rescue, the savannah was eerily still. A thin mist floated above the grasslands, and the air smelled faintly of rain, though none had fallen for weeks. Ranger Noah Carter sat beside the ranger station's jeep, staring out across the endless horizon. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that hyena's desperate face sinking deeper into the mud. Her amber eyes meeting his as if pleading not to be forgotten. He rubbed a hand across his jaw and muttered, "I should have gone back to check on her." Noah had pulled the animal out of the quicksand the day before, but she'd been too weak to follow when he tried to help her further. Once she'd regained enough strength to stand, she had limped away into the brush, disappearing without a sound. He hadn't seen her since. The other rangers hadn't believed him when he told them what happened. "Carter, you risked your life for a hyena?" One of them had said over dinner. "You're lucky she didn't tear your leg off the second you pulled her out." Noah had just shrugged. She could have, but she didn't. Now, as dawn spilled golden light across the plains, he felt an odd pull in his chest. Something unfinished, something that wouldn't let him rest. He grabbed his binoculars, slung his rifle over his shoulder, not to shoot, but for safety, and climbed back into the jeep. The drive back to the quicksand pit took nearly an hour. The morning sun was rising fast, burning away the mist and turning the world into shades of gold and amber. The ground was still soft where the mud had been disturbed. Noah parked and stepped out, scanning the ground for tracks. There, paw prints. Fresh ones. They led toward a line of acacia trees on the far side of the clearing. Noah followed, his boots crunching softly. The grass rustled ahead. Then he saw her. The hyena was lying beneath the shade of a tree, her side rising and falling with shallow breaths. Her fur was still caked with dried mud, but she was alive. Her eyes opened when she heard him approach, and for a moment panic flashed through them. She tried to rise, but her legs trembled and gave out. "Easy," Noah said quietly, lowering himself to a crouch. "I'm not here to hurt you." He took slow, careful steps forward, his hands open. She growled softly, a warning, but didn't move away. He could see now how bad her condition was. The mud had torn her skin raw in places, and one of her hind legs was swollen. She hadn't hunted. Maybe she couldn't. Noah sighed, glancing back toward the jeep. "You're not going to make it out here like this." The wind carried the dry scent of dust and grass. A vulture circled high above. Time was running out. Noah jogged back to the jeep and rummaged through the back until he found a tranquilizer syringe and a rope muzzle. He didn't like using them, but he knew if he tried to lift her as she was, instinct might take over. When he returned to the tree, she was still watching him. "I'm going to help you, okay? But you're not going to like the start of it." He loaded the dart gun, aimed carefully, and fired. The dart hit her shoulder with a small thud. The hyena flinched, snarling, then staggered and slowly sank back to the ground. Noah waited until she was fully sedated before kneeling beside her. Up close, he could feel the warmth of her breath against his hand. Her body was heavier than he'd expected as he lifted her onto a canvas stretcher. "You weigh more than you look," he muttered, panting as he carried her toward the jeep. He laid her gently in the back, covering her with a light blanket to keep her calm. As he climbed into the driver's seat, he looked back once more. "You're gonna be okay, girl. I promise." Back at the ranger outpost, Leah, the team's veterinary specialist, stared at him in disbelief. "You brought a hyena here? In my clinic?" "She was dying, Leah," Noah said firmly. "Look at her leg. It's infected. She won't survive another day without treatment." Leah crossed her arms. "Hyenas aren't exactly cooperative patients." "Then we'll make her one." Leah exhaled, shaking her head. "You're impossible." But an hour later, the small field clinic was alive with quiet urgency. They cleaned the wounds, removed ticks, and injected antibiotics. Leah worked in silence for most of it, her skepticism slowly melting away. When it was done, she stepped back and studied the animal. "She's young," she murmured. 2, maybe 3 years old. "Probably separated from her clan." Noah nodded. "That's what I figured." Leah gave him a look, half frustration, half admiration. "You really think she'll let you help her again once she wakes up?" He smiled faintly. "She already did once. When the sedative wore off, the hyena stirred." Noah watched from a distance, leaning against the doorframe. She blinked, disoriented, her ears twitching. Then her gaze found him. For a long moment neither moved. Then she did something unexpected. She didn't snarl. She didn't run. She just lay there, breathing softly, watching him as if trying to understand. Leah whispered, "She remembers you." Noah smiled. "Of course she does." He stepped forward slowly, kneeling a few feet away. "You're safe here," he said. "Just rest. That's all you need to do." Her eyes followed his every word, her body still tense, but no longer afraid. For the first time in his career, Noah felt something shift inside him. All his years of training had told him that nature didn't care, that survival was a cold, unfeeling law. But here was proof of something else. Understanding, recognition, gratitude. By evening, the hyena was sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady. Noah sat outside the clinic, the sun dipping low and painting the sky orange and red. Leah joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. "You realize you're going to get in trouble for this," she said quietly. He smirked. "Wouldn't be the first time." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft sounds of the savannah, crickets, distant birds, the rustle of wind through dry grass. Leah sipped her coffee. "You think she'll make it?" Noah looked through the window at the sleeping hyena. If she's got any fight left in her, yeah, she'll make it, Leah smiled faintly. You always see the good in things, don't you? Noah shrugged. Someone has to. As darkness settled over the plains, the first stars appeared, and the faint sound of hyena laughter echoed far in the distance. Not menacing, not mocking, but alive. Noah closed his eyes and whispered, "Rest easy, girl. Tomorrow we start over." By sunrise, the savannah had begun to stir again. The air outside the ranger station smelled of dry grass and diesel from the generator, and the first golden rays cut across the horizon like the opening of a great eye. Inside the small clinic, Noah Carter stood by the enclosure door, coffee in hand, watching the hyena through the mesh window. She was awake now, alert. Her amber eyes followed every movement he made. She no longer looked like the terrified creature sinking into quicksand, but neither was she ready to trust completely. She lay curled in the straw bed Leah had prepared, ears twitching to every sound. The rattle of metal trays, the hum of flies, the soft buzz of the fan above. Morning. Sunshine, Noah said quietly. Her tail flicked once, but she didn't move. Leah entered behind him, carrying a clipboard. She's stable. Heart rate's improving. No fever. But she hasn't eaten since yesterday. She will, Noah said with quiet certainty. She's just not sure if we're friends yet. Leah gave him a sideways glance. You talk like you're negotiating a peace treaty. He smiled faintly. Maybe I am. He reached into a bucket and pulled out a piece of raw meat, careful to keep his movements calm. The hyena's nostrils flared, her head lifting slightly. Noah crouched near the cage, holding the meat out on an open palm. Come on, girl. You've got to eat. The hyena tensed, her muscles coiled. For a moment, Noah thought she'd lunge, but instead she lowered her head and inched forward, her eyes never leaving his. Leah whispered, She's really doing it. The animal's jaws opened, and with surprising gentleness, she took the meat from his hand. The contact lasted less than a second, but it was enough to send a jolt through him. There was no violence in her eyes, no hunger-driven madness, just exhaustion and curiosity. As she chewed, Noah said softly, That's it. You're safe here. When she finished, she stepped back and sat, watching him again. He smiled. Guess we're not enemies anymore. Leah folded her arms, shaking her head. You're insane, Carter. But I think she likes you, he chuckled. You sound jealous, she laughed quietly. Maybe I am. The next few days passed slowly but steadily. Noah split his time between patrol duty and tending to the hyena, who he'd begun calling Nia, short for Nyota, meaning star in Swahili. It felt fitting. She was something that had fallen, burned, and somehow survived. He cleaned her wounds every morning, talking softly while he worked. You've got fight in you, Nia. That's good. The world needs fighters. At first she growled whenever he entered the enclosure, but by the end of the week she'd stopped. She even began approaching him voluntarily, her head tilted with cautious curiosity. Leah observed from the window one evening as Noah sat cross-legged on the floor a few feet away from the animal. She was lying on her side, licking her paw lazily while he read notes aloud from a worn field journal. When he noticed Leah watching, he grinned. What? She likes stories? Leah rolled her eyes. You're ridiculous, but she looks peaceful. Yeah, Noah said softly, glancing at Nia. She's starting to remember what peace feels like, that peace didn't last. Late one night, Noah was awakened by the sound of chaos outside. Banging metal, frantic barking from the patrol dogs. He leapt from his bed and grabbed his flashlight, sprinting toward the clinic. When he arrived, the enclosure door was rattling violently. Nia was pacing, growling low and deep. Something had terrified her. What is it, girl? Noah whispered, scanning the shadows. Then he saw it, a pair of glowing eyes near the fence line. Not human, not friendly. A leopard, thin, desperate, and bold enough to cross into ranger territory in search of food. The predator prowled closer, muscles rippling under its spotted coat. Noah could feel its intent. It wasn't after him. It was after Nia. Not tonight, he muttered. He switched on the floodlight, flooding the yard in harsh white beams. The leopard froze, startled, before turning and vanishing into the tall grass. Noah exhaled, heart pounding. He turned back to Nia, who was trembling violently in the corner of her cage. Her breaths came in sharp bursts, her eyes wide with panic. "Hey, hey," he said softly, stepping closer. "It's gone. You're safe now." She didn't calm. Her body shook harder, her claws scraping the floor. Without thinking, Noah unlatched the gate and stepped inside. Leah's voice echoed behind him. "Noah, don't—" But he ignored her. He knelt slowly beside Nia, hands open, every muscle in his body tense. I know. You're scared. But it's over." For a moment she seemed ready to strike. Her lips curled, teeth glinting. Then she stopped. Her eyes met his, and something in her shifted, a flicker of recognition. Noah stayed perfectly still. The room was silent except for her breathing. Then slowly she lowered her head and pressed her muzzle against his arm. Leah gasped. "Holy, she's comforting you?" Noah smiled faintly, relief washing over him. "Or maybe I'm comforting her." He reached out and gently brushed a smear of dirt from her fur. She didn't pull away. In that moment, something invisible but powerful connected them. A bond built not from taming, but from trust. The following morning, the reserve director stormed into the clinic. "Carter, what in God's name do you think you're doing keeping a wild hyena in here?" Noah stood tall. "Saving her. This isn't a rescue shelter. She's dangerous." "She's alive," Noah countered, "and she's recovering. That's what matters." The director slammed a hand on the table. "Release her back into the wild or I'll report you to headquarters." Noah's jaw tightened. "She can't survive out there yet." "Then that's nature's decision, not yours." When the director left, Leah turned to Noah, pale-faced. "He means it, Noah. He'll shut us down." Noah looked at Nia through the glass, where she was resting quietly, head on her paws. "If he does, I'll take her myself," Leah blinked. "You'd really risk your job for her?" He nodded without hesitation. "She trusted me once when she had no reason to. I'm not abandoning her now." Leah sighed, tears brimming in her eyes. "You're either the bravest or the most foolish man I've ever met." "Maybe both," Noah said softly. Outside, the wind carried the faint laughter of wild hyenas across the plains. Noah looked out toward the horizon and whispered, "Hold on, Nia. Whatever happens next, we face it together." The notice came 3 days later, a printed order sealed with the emblem of the Wildlife Authority. Immediate release of all non-rehabilitated predators from ranger custody. It was short, cold and final. Noah Carter read it twice, his stomach sinking. The page trembled slightly in his hand. He had known this was coming. He'd seen it in the director's eyes that morning, but seeing it in black and white still hit him like a blow. Across the room, Leah was pacing. "They're not even giving you a hearing." He shook his head. "No. They think I went rogue. I disobeyed direct orders by bringing her in." Leah threw her hands up. "You saved her, Noah. She would have died out there." "I know," he said quietly. His eyes drifted to the window, where Nia lay curled in her enclosure, sleeping. "But the people signing papers don't see that. They don't see her at all. To them, she's just another wild animal that doesn't belong here." Leah stopped pacing. Her voice softened. "What are you going to do?" Noah folded the letter and slipped it into his pocket. "I'm going to take her home." Leah frowned. "Home? You mean—" He nodded. "Back to the wild. But not the way they want me to. I'll do it right." The next morning, Noah began preparing. He gathered supplies quietly before sunrise: bandages, a tranquilizer kit, a tracking collar, and a few slabs of dried meat. Leah helped without question, though her eyes carried worry with every movement. When Nia saw him enter her enclosure, she lifted her head, ears perked. She was stronger now, her fur glossier, her gait steady. Noah smiled faintly. "You look ready." He crouched and held out a hand. Nia approached slowly, sniffing his palm before pressing her muzzle lightly against it. He could feel the warmth of her breath, the soft vibration of her growl. Not anger, but recognition. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "you'll go back where you belong." Leah appeared in the doorway. "You sure she's ready?" He nodded. Physically, yes. Emotionally, he looked into Nia's eyes. That's harder to say. They left at dawn the following day. The world was painted in pale gold, the kind of light that made even the harshest land look forgiving. Noah drove while Leah sat beside him, the back of the jeep enclosed with a reinforced crate. Inside, Nia was calm, her eyes watching the rolling landscape as if remembering it. She's not afraid, Leah murmured. It's like she knows where she's going. Noah smiled faintly. Maybe she does. They drove for hours, the dirt roads winding deeper into the reserve's northern sector, untamed land, far from the tourist routes, where no one would disturb her. The area was rich with life, zebra herds grazing in the distance, vultures spiraling high above, and the occasional roar of lions echoing across the plains. Finally, they reached a ridge overlooking a shallow valley, dotted with thorn bushes and rocky outcrops. Noah cut the engine and stepped out. The wind hit his face, hot, dry, and alive with the scent of freedom. This is it, he said quietly. Perfect hunting ground. Water nearby. Far from human settlements, Leah nodded. It's beautiful. Wild, but safe enough. Noah walked to the back of the jeep, unlocking the crate door. Nia didn't move. She looked at him, tilting her head, her amber eyes searching his face as if trying to understand what came next. He crouched low. Go on, Nia, you're free now. She didn't move. Leah whispered, she doesn't want to leave you. Noah swallowed hard. She has to. He reached in, his hand brushing her shoulder. You were never meant to stay behind bars, he said softly. You belong out here with your kind. She blinked slowly, and for a long moment neither of them moved. Then finally she stepped forward, her paws touching the earth. She looked around cautiously, sniffing the air. Noah took a step back, giving her space. That's it, girl, go! She walked a few feet, pausing to glance back at him one last time. Then with a graceful leap, she bounded toward the open valley, her spotted coat blending into the tall grass until she vanished completely. Leah's voice was barely above a whisper. That was harder to watch than I expected. Noah didn't answer. His throat was tight. For the rest of the day, they stayed nearby, observing through binoculars. Nia didn't stray far. She explored cautiously, sniffing old burrows and marking the ground. When she looked directly toward the ridge, as if sensing their presence, Leah smiled. She's adjusting, but Noah couldn't shake the ache in his chest. Yeah, he said softly. She's doing what she's supposed to. It's me who's not. Leah placed a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing. You gave her a second chance. He nodded, though the words felt hollow. It just feels like I lost a friend. As they packed up to leave, Noah glanced one last time toward the valley. The sun was setting now, turning the sky blood red. For a moment, he thought he saw her silhouette near the water's edge, her head raised, ears alert. She looked strong, whole, free. He smiled through the sting in his eyes. Goodbye, Nia. They returned to the outpost late that night. The director was waiting by the gate, arms crossed. I see you followed orders. Noah stopped the jeep. I released her. The man's tone was flat. Good. Then we're done here. Noah opened his mouth to respond, but Leah grabbed his arm, shaking her head. Let it go, she whispered. He exhaled, climbing back into the jeep. As they drove away, Leah looked at him. You really think that's the end? Noah stared out the window. No, he said quietly. It never ends that easily. He was right. 3 nights later, a patrol ranger called him on the radio. Carter, you might want to see this. What is it? Tracks. Big ones. Fresh. Looks like a hyena was circling the outpost. Noah's heart skipped. Circling, alone? Yeah, didn't approach, just watched. Then disappeared. Noah didn't reply for a moment. He stepped outside his cabin, staring into the darkness beyond the fence. The air was still, thick with the hum of night insects. Somewhere far off, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of a single laugh. Soft, haunting, familiar. Leah appeared behind him, wrapping her arms around herself. Was that? He nodded slowly, a smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, that was her. They stood in silence, listening to the echo drift across the plains until it faded into the wind. She's telling us she's okay, Leah whispered. Noah exhaled, feeling a strange peace wash over him. "And maybe," he said softly, "she's reminding us that trust doesn't end when the cage opens. It just begins somewhere else." The rains came without warning. After months of drought and fire, the sky finally broke open as if the heavens themselves couldn't hold back any longer. Sheets of water pounded the savannah, flooding gullies and washing away everything that wasn't anchored to the earth. The parched land drank greedily, but too much had been lost. Grass roots torn up by wind, soil cracked by heat. Now, instead of life, the rain brought chaos. Noah Carter stood at the edge of the ranger outpost, his boots already sinking in mud. He'd been on watch since sunrise, trying to secure the supply shed before the storm got worse. Leah's voice crackled through his radio. "Noah, the lower camp's flooding fast. We need to move the generator." "Copy that," he answered, sprinting through the downpour. The wind howled so hard it nearly ripped his hat away. The world was a blur of grey and brown. The earth itself seemed to be shifting. As he reached the lower slope, the ground gave way beneath his feet. A section of earth collapsed with a roar, pulling him down. He landed hard in a pit of swirling mud and rainwater. His shoulders screamed with pain, and the radio slipped from his grasp. "Leah!" he shouted, but his voice was swallowed by thunder. The pit wasn't deep, maybe 6 feet, but the rain made it a trap. Each time he tried to climb, the walls crumbled, sliding him back down into the thick, sucking mud. Panic clawed at his chest as he realized what it was. Quicksand, again! He laughed bitterly through the rain. "You've got to be kidding me." The irony wasn't lost on him. The rescuer now trapped in the same kind of pit that had nearly claimed Nia weeks before. The same hopeless suction, pulling him down inch by inch. He tried using a branch as leverage, but it snapped instantly. The mud reached his waist. His boots were gone, swallowed whole. "Leah!" he shouted again, straining against the sucking pull. "Help!" No response. Only the roaring wind and relentless rain. For the first time in years, Noah felt fear that wasn't for another living thing, but for himself. The mud climbed higher. He tried to stay calm, forcing his breath steady. "You got her out," he muttered. "You can get yourself out." But the more he fought, the deeper he sank. Then through the chaos, something moved on the ridge above. A shape against the curtain of rain. At first he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Then came a sound that made his heart stop. A familiar rolling laugh that rose and fell through the storm. Nia. She stood on the ridge, her coat slick with rain, her eyes locked on him. Noah's voice broke. "Nia, go!
Get out of here!"
But she didn't. She came closer, slipping and stumbling down the slope until she stood just a few feet away. The mud around her paws trembled, but held firm. She growled low, pacing in agitation. Her eyes darted between him and the tree roots jutting out near the edge of the pit. Noah realized what she was trying to do. "No, Nia, no," he said breathlessly. "You can't," but she already had a plan. She bit down on one of the exposed roots, tugging fiercely until it snapped free, then dragged it closer to the edge, pushing it toward him. Noah reached out, his hand trembling. The root brushed his fingertips but slipped away. "Come on, girl," he gasped. "Try again," she barked, a sharp, frustrated sound, and shoved the branch forward again. This time Noah caught it. He looped his arm around it, anchoring himself. "Good girl. Good girl," he whispered. Using what little strength he had left, he pulled while she dug her paws into the ground and braced her body. The mud resisted, dragging at him like hands that didn't want to let go. He gritted his teeth and pulled harder, muscles burning, then with a sound like suction breaking. He lurched free, collapsing onto the wet grass. Gasping for air, for a long moment, he just lay there, rain pounding on his back, chest heaving. Then he felt movement beside him. Nia stood there, dripping, her chest rising and falling rapidly. He turned his head toward her and laughed weakly. "You just saved my life." She tilted her head, blinking, and gave a short, breathy laugh of her own, the same sound she'd made when he'd saved her. Noah reached out, his muddy hand brushing her fur. "Guess we're even now." By the time Leah found them, the rain had slowed to a steady drizzle. She froze at the sight. Noah sitting beside the hyena, both soaked and covered in mud, but alive. What? What is she doing here? Leah stammered. She found me, Noah said simply. She pulled me out. Leah stared, speechless. Noah. She crossed half the reserve to reach this area. How could she even know where you were? He shrugged, still smiling faintly. Some bonds don't need maps. Nia took a few steps back, as if preparing to leave. Noah rose to his knees. Hey, he called softly. She paused. You don't have to disappear this time. She looked at him for a long moment, the rain dripping from her muzzle. Then with a low chuff, she turned and trotted toward the open plains. But halfway up the ridge, she stopped and looked back, her amber eyes glowing in the faint light of dawn. It was a look Noah would never forget. Not a goodbye, a promise. Back at the outpost, Leah helped clean his wounds while he told her everything. She listened in silence until the end, then shook her head in disbelief. She's not just some random animal anymore, Noah. That's something else. He nodded slowly. Yeah, something I don't think I can explain. They sat on the porch that evening as the clouds broke apart, revealing a sky so clear it looked brand new. The land below glistened, reborn. The fire scars, the drought, the floods, everything had changed, and yet the wild kept finding a way to start again. Noah looked out toward the horizon. You think she'll come back? Leah smiled softly. If she needed you, she found you. If you ever need her, maybe she'll do it again, he chuckled. Fair trade. They sat in comfortable silence until night fell. Crickets began to sing again. Frogs croaked near the newly filled ponds, and life, stubborn, beautiful life, resumed its rhythm. Then, faintly from somewhere beyond the hills, came a laugh, soft, familiar, free. Leah turned her head, smiling. That's her, isn't it? Noah nodded slowly. Yeah, that's her. He leaned back, closing his eyes, the sound carrying on the breeze. It wasn't the mocking laugh the world feared. It was the laugh of something wild, alive and grateful, a reminder that compassion doesn't end at species, and that sometimes the bonds we form in the wild outlast everything else. The dry season returned quietly, as if the storm months had never happened. Grass grew tall again, bleaching gold under the relentless sun. Herds of wildebeest and zebra swept through the plains like rivers of motion, and life went on, the endless rhythm of Africa. At the ranger outpost, Noah Carter leaned on the hood of his jeep, binoculars in hand. It had been 6 months since that night in the Quicksand pit, 6 months since Nia had vanished back into the wild after saving his life. He'd told the story a dozen times, to Leah, to the director, to anyone who'd listen. Most had smiled politely, some had rolled their eyes. A hyena saved your life, they said. You sure you didn't imagine it? But Noah didn't need their belief. He had something stronger, the memory of those amber eyes in the rain. Leah stepped beside him, sipping from a battered metal mug. Still watching for her? He smiled faintly. Maybe. She's out there somewhere, Noah, you know that. He nodded, scanning the horizon. Yeah, I just like knowing I might see her again. The radio on the dashboard crackled suddenly. Base to Carter. You reading me? Noah grabbed the receiver. Go ahead. We've got movement near the northern boundary. Looks like poachers. 2 trucks, lights off. Could be baiting traps. Leah's face tightened. That's the area near Red Clay Gorge. Noah's pulse quickened. That was the same sector where he'd released Naya. Copy that, he said into the radio. I'm heading out now. Leah hesitated. Noah, wait for backup. You can't go alone. He grabbed his rifle and keys. If they're setting traps again, there's no time. I'll call if I need help. Before she could protest, he was gone, the jeep roaring through the dust, leaving a trail of red haze behind. Night had fallen by the time he reached the gorge. The moon hung low, painting the land in silver. The air carried the faint metallic scent of blood and engine oil. He cut the headlights and parked behind a cluster of rocks, moving on foot with a flashlight and rifle slung over his shoulder. Voices drifted from the shadows ahead, low, harsh, and foreign. 2 men stood by a steel snare line stretched across a game trail. Behind them, a truck bed glinted with the outline of cages. Noah crouched low, heart pounding. He counted 3. No, 4 of them. One was holding a rifle. He whispered to himself, "Not tonight, you bastards." He inched closer, stepping carefully over dry branches. But his boot caught on a root, snapping it clean. The sound was soft but loud enough. One of the men spun around, shouting something in Swahili. Flashlights flared. Noah dove behind a rock as a gunshot cracked through the air, the bullet sparking off stone inches from his head. He rolled to the side, clutching his rifle. "I'm armed," he shouted. "Drop your weapons and get on the ground." The poachers laughed. Another shot whined past him. He returned fire, aiming high to scare them off. "You're in protected land. You'll spend 20 years in prison." But they weren't running. They were advancing. Then a sound ripped through the night, a low, rumbling growl. Then another. And another. Noah froze. From the dark brush beyond the poachers came movement, silent at first, then explosive. Shadows streaked between the trees, fast and fluid. Hyenas, 6 of them. Their laughter filled the gorge, echoing like a war cry. The men spun around, panicked. What the hell? The pack surged forward, snapping and growling, circling with precision. The poachers fired wildly into the dark, but the hyenas were too fast, darting in and out, their eyes glowing like embers. One man dropped his rifle and scrambled into the truck, shouting. Another tripped, falling backward into the mud. Noah rose slowly from behind the rock, flashlight trembling in his hand. He didn't fire. He didn't need to. The hyenas weren't killing. They were driving the men away, herding them toward the open plains. It was controlled, coordinated, intelligent. And then he saw her. Standing at the center of it all, calm and regal, was Nia. Her coat gleamed in the moonlight, her stance proud. She locked eyes with him from across the chaos, and for a heartbeat the world went still. "No way," he whispered. "You came back." The poachers, realizing they were outmatched, bolted toward their trucks, engines screaming as they tore away into the distance. Dust rose in their wake, and then silence. The pack slowly retreated, their job done. But Nia didn't move. She stared at Noah, then padded forward through the tall grass until she stood just a few feet away. He lowered his rifle and stepped closer, his voice breaking. "You saved me again." She tilted her head, giving a low, rumbling sound that was almost a purr. He crouched, eyes glistening. "You led them, didn't you? You protected your land." "And me?" Nia blinked slowly, then glanced toward the horizon where her pack waited. She looked back once more, her gaze deep and knowing. Then she turned, trotting back into the wild, her laughter echoing faintly behind her. Noah watched until she disappeared, tears mixing with the dust on his face. "Goodbye, my friend," he whispered. "You're everything the world gets wrong about your kind." At dawn, Leah found him standing at the gorge, the light painting the earth gold again. She saw the tracks in the mud, dozens of paw prints surrounding tire marks. "What happened here?" she asked quietly. Noah smiled faintly. "Justice." They watched the sunrise together in silence. After a long pause, Leah said, "Do you think she'll come back again?" He shook his head. "No, she doesn't need to." He turned his eyes to the horizon. "But I think she'll always be watching." As they headed back to the outpost, the radio buzzed with static. The patrol team reported finding the poachers' abandoned truck miles away. Its tires shredded, the cages empty, the traps destroyed. Noah listened quietly, a small smile forming. "She finished what we started." Leah looked at him. "You really think they did that?" He glanced out the window. In the distance, just beyond the heat shimmer, he thought he saw a familiar shape moving along the ridge. Strong, graceful, untamed. He nodded. "Yeah, I think she did." That evening, Noah sat by the fire outside the station, the sky above alive with stars. The air was calm now, almost sacred. From far away, the faint, haunting laughter of hyenas drifted through the darkness. Not the cruel sound people imagined, but something softer. A chorus of life. He smiled, his eyes reflecting the flames. "Thank you, Nia," he murmured, "for reminding us what loyalty looks like." The fire crackled, the wind shifted, and for just a moment, he could almost swear he heard her beside him, a whisper of breath, a flicker of warmth, and that familiar sound of laughter fading into the night. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who believes that courage and compassion can exist in every creature, even the ones the world misunderstands. Because sometimes the wild doesn't need saving. It saves us.